This is horrifying discovery. A Roman gladiator was mauled by a lion in ancient Rome. Let's deep dive.
Okay, so let's unpack this. A 2,000-year-old skeleton found in York.
Right.
And you might initially think, okay, another old bone, but this tells a really shocking story.
It really does.
We're talking about the first actual archaeological proof that a Roman gladiator here in Britain seems to have been, well, mauled to death by a lion.
Yeah, it's quite graphic, isn't it? Forget the movies, the sort of sanitized versions. This is actual physical evidence.
Exactly, it's tangible.
And what's so significant here is that for ages, really, our idea of gladiators fighting big cats, it came from, writings, mosaics, that sort of thing.
We've all seen those images.
Right, we've read the accounts.
Yeah.
But to actually have bones with trauma that lines up so clearly with a lion attack, that's a game changer.
How so?
Well, it shifts it. It moves from just historical stories to, undeniable physical fact. Right there in the bone.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive, then.
Yeah.
Let's really get into this discovery.
Let's do it.
We want to figure out what this one skeleton tells us about, well, the brutal reality of these fights, but specifically in a place so far from Rome, from the Colosseum.
Yeah, far from the heart of the empire.
So you listening, you're going to get a really unique, maybe even a bit of a visceral insight into this world that, honestly, we usually only see through fiction.
And it's all based on solid research. This analysis of the skeleton from York, it's detailed in PLOS One.
Which is a serious peer-reviewed journal, so we know the science is sound.
Definitely. So where do we start? The discovery itself.
Yeah, let's set the scene. This skeleton wasn't found just anywhere, was it?
No, not at all. It was part of a Roman cemetery, specifically at Driffield Terrace in York.
And this cemetery is, well, it's kind of special, isn't it?
Very special. It's known as one of the best preserved gladiator cemeteries. I mean, a cemetery pretty much dedicated to them.
Wow. Okay, so the way they were buried, the things found with them, it all offers clues.
Exactly. Unique insights into how they lived and how they died. A dedicated resting place for these fighters. Think about that.
And the time frame. Remind us.
We're looking at roughly 2,000 years ago, early centuries AD. Rome's presence in Britain was pretty strong then.
Right. And the skeleton itself.
It belonged to a man, probably aged between 26 and 35, and noticeably muscular, which, fits the profile.
Okay, but here's the kicker. He wasn't alone. He was part of this larger group.
Yes, 82 skeletons in total, all young men, all well-built. And for ages, people strongly suspected they were gladiators, just based on, their physique and where they were buried.
But it was still just a strong suspicion, an assumption.
Pretty much, until now. Now we have
Yeah.
well, you could call it the smoking gun, or maybe the smoking bite mark.
Huh. Right. Tell us about that, the bite marks.
So they're really compelling evidence, distinct marks right on the hip bone. They've been looked at very, very closely.
By experts.
Oh, yeah. Melanie Holst, she's an osteoarchaeologist, studies ancient bones at the University of York. She confirmed it, said these marks are overwhelmingly likely from a lion.
Overwhelmingly likely. So pretty certain then.
Very certain. And it wasn't just a glance. They did detailed comparisons, analysis.
What did she say specifically about what this means for the cemetery overall?
She basically said these marks are the definitive proof. They confirm these individuals were gladiators, not just soldiers or, workers like some other theories suggested.
And this is the really wild part.
Yeah.
It's the first time. The very first time we have this kind of proof, bone-deep proof of gladiators actually fighting large carnivores.
That's it. The first osteological confirmation. It's huge.
And was this wound survivable, or was it definitely the cause of death?
Oh, no. The nature of it is critical. It was severe, really severe. No signs of healing at all, almost certainly fatal. This wasn't a nip. It was the end.
Gosh, a grim end for him. But wait, there was more. Something about decapitation?
Yes, that's another layer. Evidence suggests he was decapitated after he died.
After. Why? Why do that?
Well, post-mortem decapitation, it was a thing in the Roman world. Not everywhere, not always, but particularly sometimes for those who died in combat.
So like a ritual?
Possibly. It could signify something about their status, maybe specific to gladiators, or even certain types of gladiators, perhaps the bestiari, the animal fighters. It really makes you wonder about their beliefs about death back then.
And he wasn't buried alone either.
No, he was found with 2 other individuals. And interestingly, horse bones were in the grave, too.
Horse bones. What might that mean? Status. Ritual.
Could be either, or both. Horses often meant prestige, maybe military links in Roman society. So finding them with a gladiator, It's intriguing. Maybe he had a connection to horses, or it was symbolic, part of the funeral.
So we have this incredibly violent death. But what about his life before that final fight? Does the skeleton tell us anything about that? It wasn't all glory, I imagine?
Oh, definitely not. Despite being muscular later in life, his skeleton showed signs of real hardship.
Like what?
Things like serious spinal problems, probably from just the brutal physical demands of training, fighting, and also signs he'd suffered malnutrition when he was younger.
So a tough life, strain, deprivation, long before he even met that lion.
Exactly. Paints a picture of constant physical stress.
And based on all this, Professor Tim Thompson thinks he was a specific type of gladiator, a Bisterius.
That's his suggestion, yes.
Okay, for anyone listening, remind us what a Bisterius did.
So a Bisterius was a specialist. Their main job was fighting wild animals, not human opponents, but animals. Lions, bears, whatever they brought in.
For public entertainment.
Exactly. It was about showcasing the power of these animals against these trained fighters. Exceptionally dangerous work. And the lion by evidence points strongly towards that being his role.
This find really feels different. We've seen the art, read the text, like you said, but actually having the physical proof, the bones with the marks, it just hits differently, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes it so much more real. This isn't just another interesting historical tidbit. It's direct, visceral proof of what happened.
It reshapes how we see Roman entertainment, maybe. Makes it less abstract.
Absolutely. It gives us a direct link to the brutal reality of it. We're not just imagining the danger, we're seeing the actual consequence written in bone.
And it really hammers home the point that this stuff wasn't just happening in Rome, in the Colosseum.
Crucial point. This was happening right here in York, Britain, far out in the provinces.
York was a big deal for the Romans, though, wasn't it? Constantine was declared emperor there.
Exactly. It was a major center. And having figures like Constantine there probably created demand for that kind of grand Roman entertainment, like gladiatorial games. They weren't just a Rome thing. They were part of life across the empire.
But a lion.
Yeah.
In York. I mean, logistically, that seems incredible. Wouldn't they have used, I don't know, bears or something smaller up there?
That's what makes it so revealing. It challenges that assumption that only smaller, maybe less dangerous animals were used outside the big arenas in Italy.
So getting lions all the way to Britain, keeping them, that was a major undertaking.
Huge. It's just a real commitment to putting on spectacular and dangerous shows, maybe even trying to replicate the grandeur of Rome itself. Imperial propaganda, perhaps?
But what about the owners? These gladiators were expensive, right? Valuable fighters. Were they just throwing them to lions casually?
That's a really good point. Risk management. The owners, the Lanistae, they had to balance things. They wanted thrilling shows, dangerous animals drew crowds.
Bigger crowds, more money.
Right. But they also didn't want to lose their star fighters too easily. The fact that lions were used, though, suggests sometimes the demand for the ultimate spectacle won out over protecting the asset.
And just to double check on the lion identification.
Yeah.
They didn't just guess, right? How did they confirm lions specifically?
Oh, no, it was very scientific. They meticulously compared the bite marks on that hip bone against known bite patterns. They have samples from zoo animals, different carnivores, and the match with the lion was definitive. Really precise work using modern osteoarchaeology.
David Jennings from York Archaeology summed it up nicely, didn't he? He said it gives a remarkable insight into the life and death of this individual.
Yeah, it brings it back to the human level. This was a person.
And he also mentioned ongoing genome research, trying to find out where these guys actually came from.
Exactly. That's adding another whole dimension. Understanding their origins, their backgrounds, it layers onto the story.
Yeah.
And his comparison, York's arena being like Rome's Wembley Stadium.
Yeah, I like that.
It really gets across the scale the importance of these events, even way out here in Britain.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. This 2,000-year-old skeleton from York. It's more than just bones.
Way more.
It's the first solid, direct proof we have of a Roman gladiator in Britain meeting this terrifying end, fighting a lion, and dying from it.
It gives us that tangible link, that visceral connection to the sheer brutality of ancient entertainment, far away from the Colosseum's shadow.
It really forces you to confront what this entertainment actually involved. It wasn't just athletics.
No, it was pitting humans against apex predators, deliberately, often fatally. This skeleton makes that incredibly starkly clear.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
And leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What else is still buried out there?
Right. What other hidden realities, what other things we think of as maybe exaggerated or fictional are waiting to be discovered.
What other blockbuster movie moments were just Tuesday afternoon for someone back then? It really makes you think about the individual lives caught up in these huge
Line
historical
bite
narratives.
marks on Roman gladiator skeletons. Comment a thought on this story. Thanks.